Tracking down the people who talked to the House Intelligence Chairman about surveillance on Donald Trump's campaign. We'll discuss with the panel after a quick break.
I informed Speaker Ryan this morning of this new information, and I will be going to the White House this afternoon to share what I know with the president and his team.
He had told me that like a whistleblower type person had given him some information.
This looks like nothing like a whistleblower case. The object here was to give it to somebody to give to the president. It makes it all the more bewildering.
We are not going to start commenting on one-off anonymous sources that publications publish.
If it were wrong, would you tell us?
I'm not gonna get into it.
All right, let's bring in our panel to talk about all the latest developments today. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard. Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today, and editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Laura Ingraham. And guys, I feel like I can barely keep up with this because even as we're going to air, there are new things happening. We had these letters back and forth. Steve, I want to start with you because this information that has been referred to today now, our John Roberts is confirming that there was an NSC staffer and a White House counsel staffer that were the ones who alerted Devin Nunes to this information and gave it to him. Now, the White House has invited Congressman Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, to come over and take a look too. He said today, I'm really concerned if that's how this information was done. Was it laundered by taking it to the committee instead of just going straight to the White House?
Well, look, ultimately the information is what the information is. And when we find out, we'll be able to make a determination as to whether it was important or whether there was any nefarious behavior on the part of the Obama administration or not. But certainly the process doesn't look good. I mean, the questions that people are raising about the process, did this come from the White House? Was it presented to Chairman Nunes, who then took it public, took it to the president, and made a big deal about it? Was this all an effort to spin this story, to create some PR pushback for President Trump? It's certainly the case that Chairman Nunes and those who are familiar with the material that he's seen believe that there was real wrongdoing in that. You talk to them and there's no question that they believe that that's the case. The question, I think, when this information finally comes out, and I'm confident that it will, were we likely to have seen the same kinds of things, the same kinds of intelligence reporting back, say, in the 2008 to 2009 timeframe, the transition from George W. Bush's administration to Barack Obama's administration? If we see this information and it looks like something that we would have seen in any other transition, it's probably not as big a deal as they're suggesting it is. If, on the other hand, we see this unmasking and the tasking for the unmasking has come from the White House or the NSC.
Meaning the Obama.
The Obama administration, right. Then I think that raises additional questions.
Well, and something that's throwing gasoline on this whole conversation are these remarks on MSNBC by Evelyn Farkas, who was an Obama-era administration official, and she talked about pushing out information, making sure people on the Hill had it, that kind of thing, Susan. You know, Don McGahn references that, White House counsel references that in his letter to the committee chairs, saying, you know, these comments raise some questions about the underlying issue.
They do, and they raise some questions, some questions about whether the Obama administration was so suspicious of the incoming Trump people that they did things that were inappropriate, that had not been done before, that were an effort to make sure this information got out one way or another. So I agree that that's something serious to look at. But one impact of this controversy, I think, is to undermine Chairman Nunes's credibility on the Hill, to raise questions about whether he can continue to act as chairman of that committee. It certainly has poisoned his relationship with the Democrats on that committee, and that's of some concern because the Intelligence Committee, unlike most of the committees on the Hill, has a kind of history of acting in a somewhat bipartisan way, and also under the radar, not always publicizing every single thing that is going on at that committee. This raises concerns about how this is going to work going forward.
Yeah, and Laura, do you think that the critics now pouncing on the process of the way that Devin Nunes handled this and criticizing that are going to be able to successfully deflect away from that if the underlying information, as Steve said, possibly, you know, we'll see what version we get, if it does prove that what the president said about people listening in or looking at his information was actually happening?
I think that's the effort. And as part of the demonization of Devin Nunes, and I would agree with Steve that, and Susan, that it probably could have done this a little differently when the information came to him. I have a really strong hunch that when we find out what happened, we're going to find out that transition officials who had nothing to do with Russia were being surveilled, incidentally, not incidentally, and their names were being unmasked to various people inside the administration, and if those individuals in the Obama administration came from the NSC and or the White House counsel's office. When I hear the White House counsel's office is involved in this, I worked in the White House a long time ago. That in and of itself is odd. Why would they get involved at this point in this? Because of the underlying illegality of the unmasking. So while the process question is interesting and important, I think, to address, the substance of this claim could be really serious. And if it's not, then I agree with you. Everyone will focus on Devin Nunes should have done this or that. But if they're unmasking Trump transition people who had nothing to do with the Russia investigation, or even if they had, that's really serious, and it goes right to the heart of what Farkas was saying, which is we got to get this information out now
and spread it out.
We don't trust the Trump team. We got to delegitimize them in our final days in office.
And what Nunes has said is that what he briefed the White House about wasn't related to Russia.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But we have a little bit of breaking news coming in. The Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Mike Flynn, of course, who lost his post as National Security Advisor, is offering to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee, which had its first public hearing today, of course. He's willing to testify to the committee's House and Senate in exchange for a deal. So, Steve, where do you think we go down that path?
That's a good question. Usually you don't propose offering testimony in exchange for a deal unless there's a reason for you to want a deal. Having known nothing about the details of that, we know for sure that he was unmasked in one of his communications, and we know that he wasn't straightforward about what he had participated in, both with respect to the questions on Russia and later with respect to the questions on Turkey. So maybe that's why he wants the deal.
But this is exactly how investigations go, right? You start pulling a thread. Somebody at some level becomes interested in having a deal, presumably because there's some reason that he wants a deal, and you see where that testimony takes you. This is the classic investigative course of every investigation we've ever seen in Washington.
Right, and the Senate's very much working to say this is bipartisan. We're just going to follow this where it leads. Burr and Warner presenting a very united front, and today they talked about the interviews they have locked in, the ones that could start as early as Monday, and now we have Flynn possibly at the table too.
As the circle widens, for the people who don't know if they're the target of an investigation, anytime you hear someone say, I'll testify for immunity, it means, potentially someone could be ratted out here. Or it could mean that Mike Flynn just doesn't trust the prosecution possibilities. And there's a lot of reason, frankly, as I'm speaking as an old defense counsel, there's a lot of reason in previous political prosecutions, McDonnell, Scooter Libby, there's a reason not to trust a lot of the prosecutors who are hell-bent on putting a trophy on the wall. So who knows what Mike Flynn is wanting a deal for, but it probably makes some people around the Trump team a little nervous tonight.
Well, and who knows? Before the show is over in 15 minutes, we may have another development. So buckle up.